My name is Simone Cartwright. I'm 38 years old. 14 months ago, I walked into a branch of First Meridian Bank on a Tuesday afternoon to deposit a check from my freelance work, wearing a gray coat and carrying a tote bag, thinking about nothing more significant than whether I had time to stop for groceries on the way home. The teller looked at my face, and her expression changed. She excused herself. She came back with a manager. The manager asked me, very carefully, whether I was related to a woman named Evelyn Cartwright. I said yes. That was my grandmother. He asked me to step into a private office. What he showed me inside that office made my hands go cold. My Aunt Gloria had forged my grandmother's signature on withdrawal authorizations for a $320,000 savings account, an account my grandmother had opened in 1987 and had never mentioned to anyone in the family except, it turned out, me. The teller had recognized my face because she had known my grandmother for 11 years, and I looked enough like her that she had stopped breathing for just a moment when I walked through the door. But what Gloria didn't know, what no one in my family knew except my grandmother and me, was that 2 months before Grandma Evelyn passed, she had sat me down at her kitchen table and told me something. She had placed a document in my hands and said, "You keep this somewhere safe, and when the time comes, you'll know what to do with it." I knew exactly what to do with it. Before I tell you what happened next, please like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? I love connecting with all of you. Now let me take you all the way back to the beginning. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a family organized around one central fact. My Aunt Gloria was my grandmother's favorite child, and everyone knew it, and no one was allowed to say so out loud. My grandmother had 4 children, my mother Diane being the second oldest, Gloria being the youngest by 11 years. Where my mother was steady and private and built her life brick by brick, Gloria was loud and charming and had been arriving places empty-handed and leaving with more than she came with since she was approximately 19 years old. I watched this dynamic play out my entire childhood with a particular kind of clarity that comes from being the grandchild who actually showed up. When I was 9, my grandmother broke her wrist. My mother drove 40 minutes each way, 3 times a week, for 6 weeks, to help her cook and clean and get to her physical therapy appointments. Gloria sent a card with a gift card to a restaurant my grandmother couldn't easily get to. At Christmas that year, my grandmother gave Gloria a pearl necklace that had belonged to my great-grandmother. My mother got a candle set from a drugstore. I watched my mother smile and say it was lovely, and I watched her eyes when she thought no one was looking. At 17, I got a partial academic scholarship to Georgia State. I needed $4,200 to cover the gap. My mother didn't have it. She was raising me alone after my father left when I was 11, working 2 jobs, making it work. I asked my grandmother if she could help. She said she was sorry, that money was tight, that she wished she could. 2 months later, Gloria's son Brandon, my cousin, who had failed out of community college the previous spring, asked for money to enroll in a trade program. My grandmother wrote him a check for $6,500. I got a second part-time job and covered the gap myself. I told myself that was just how things went sometimes, that it wasn't personal, that Grandma Evelyn loved me even if she expressed it differently. I told myself that for years, longer than I should have. The worst one came when I was 26. My grandmother's house needed a new roof. The estimate was $14,800. She was 71 and on a fixed income, and the repair was urgent. I had been working as a graphic designer for 3 years by then, building a client base, not yet comfortable but not desperate either. I contributed $3,000. My mother contributed $2,500. We scraped together just over half and asked the rest of the family to help fill the gap. Gloria said she was between things financially and couldn't swing it right now. 6 weeks later, she flew to Cancun for a week with a man she'd been seeing for 4 months. She posted the photos on Facebook. My mother saw them on a Sunday morning and didn't say a word, just closed the app and went to make coffee. I noticed. I always noticed. What I didn't know then was how deep Gloria's pattern went. I didn't know what she'd been doing quietly for years, inside accounts and documents and conversations I wasn't present for. I didn't know yet what I was sitting next to. My grandmother and I had a different relationship than she had with most of the family. It developed slowly, over years of small things. I was the one who came to her house on random Saturdays just to sit with her. The one who drove her to her eye appointments and waited in the lobby with a book. The one who called on Wednesday evenings for no particular reason. She was sharp and funny and private, and she told me things she didn't tell other people, and I understood that as the gift it was. 3 months before she died, she called me on a Wednesday evening and asked if I could come by that Saturday. I came. We had lunch. She made her cornbread, the one I had been trying to replicate for 15 years and could never quite get right. We ate at her kitchen table with the window cracked even though it was October, because she liked the cold air. After lunch, she set down her fork and looked at me for a long moment. "I need to tell you some things," she said, "and I need you to listen carefully because I'm only going to say them once." She told me about the account. She had opened it in 1987 with an inheritance from her own mother, added to it steadily over 30 years, and never mentioned it to her children because she had watched, for decades, what happened when people knew money existed. They started anticipating it, started making plans around it, started treating you differently. The account held $320,000. She told me she had updated the beneficiary designation 2 years prior. She told me who it named. She told me where the documentation was kept. Then she reached across the table and placed an envelope in my hands. "This is a letter," she said. "It's notarized. It explains my intentions in my own words, in case anyone decides to misunderstand the paperwork. You keep it somewhere no one else can get to it." I looked at her. "Grandma." "I know what Gloria does," she said. She said it very quietly, without drama. "I have always known. I let it go on longer than I should have because she was my baby and I kept thinking she would change. She hasn't changed. I'm sorry I wasn't braver sooner." She reached over and covered my hand with hers. "You showed up," she said. "For 20 years you just kept showing up. That matters more than most people understand." I drove home with the envelope in my bag and cried most of the way on the interstate. Not from sadness exactly, from being seen. From the specific, quiet devastation of having something you had quietly needed for a long time finally given to you. I kept the envelope in a fireproof box in my closet. My grandmother passed 11 weeks later, peacefully, in her own home, on a Thursday morning in January, with my mother and me on either side of her. What followed was the worst 6 months of my life, and also the most clarifying. Gloria materialized at the house within 4 hours of the call. She was organized in a way I had never seen her be organized before. She knew where the filing cabinet was. She knew where my grandmother kept her important papers. She moved through that house with a specific purpose that had nothing to do with grief. She pulled documents. She made calls. At one point, I walked into the back bedroom, and she was at my grandmother's desk, going through the bottom drawer. And when she looked up at me, her expression reset into something softer so quickly that if I hadn't caught the half-second before, I might have believed it. She spoke to someone at the bank within the first 2 days. I know this because she mentioned it at dinner the night before the funeral, casually, the way you mention something you want to sound routine. "I called to let them know," she said, "to get the process started." I didn't ask what process. I was sitting next to my mother at a table covered in casseroles that neighbors had dropped off, and I was too hollowed out to ask the right questions. My mother handled the funeral arrangements with her usual steadiness. I helped with logistics, the flowers, the program, the calls to out-of-town relatives. Gloria supervised, which in practice meant she made suggestions and left the execution to everyone else, then stood at the reception afterward receiving condolences with the particular warmth of someone who has rehearsed it. 2 weeks after the funeral, my cousin Brandon, Gloria's son, mentioned casually at a family dinner that they were looking at a piece of property outside of Atlanta. "Investment opportunity," he said. "Good timing on the market." I looked across the table at him. I looked at Gloria. She was eating calmly, talking about something else. I went home that night and sat with the weight of what I had just understood. I opened my laptop and looked up the timeline. My grandmother had passed January 9th. The post-death withdrawal authorization was dated January 20th. 11 days. Gloria had moved on that account 11 days after we buried her mother. I thought about all of it. The Cancun trip, the $6,500 to Brandon, the way Gloria had moved through my grandmother's house the afternoon she died. purposeful and organized in a way grief does not make you. I thought about how many Saturdays I had driven 40 minutes to sit at that kitchen table, how many Wednesday evening calls, how many waiting rooms with a book in my lap. I thought about the envelope in my fireproof box. I opened the fireproof box. I took out my grandmother's letter. I read it again, slowly, all the way through. Then I called the bank. I asked to speak with someone about a savings account held in my grandmother's name. I gave them her information. The woman I spoke to was polite and cautious and said someone would call me back within 2 business days. They called back the next morning. What they had found in the preceding weeks, which they had flagged internally but had not yet escalated because the estate process was still in motion, were 3 withdrawal authorizations dated across a 4-month period, 2 before my grandmother's death, 1 after, bearing my grandmother's signature. The one after her death was dated 11 days following, signed 3 days before Gloria had spoken to the bank. The bank had flagged it because of inconsistencies in the signature on the post-death document. They had been building a paper trail. They needed me to come in. I came in on a Tuesday afternoon. I wore a gray coat. I was thinking about groceries, and the teller looked at my face and went to get the manager. In the private office, with the door closed, the manager spread copies of the withdrawal authorizations across the desk. He showed me the flagged signature. He showed me what their internal handwriting analysis had noted. He explained that the account's beneficiary designation, updated 2 years before my grandmother's death, was clear and legal and on file. Then I opened my tote bag and took out the notarized letter. He read it without speaking. His expression did not change much, but something in his posture did. A settling, like a question that had been hanging in the air had just been answered. "This is exactly what we needed," he said. The bank filed a report with law enforcement that afternoon. They froze the remaining funds, $287,000. The balance after the 3 withdrawals totaling $33,000 had cleared, pending investigation. I drove to my mother's house and sat at her kitchen table, and I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. She looked at her hands. She said, "I always knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong." Then she said something I have thought about many times since. "Your grandmother trusted you with this because she knew you wouldn't flinch." She was right. The investigation moved over the following 4 months. I cooperated with everything they asked of me. Every document request, every follow-up call, every meeting with the detective assigned to the case, a quiet and methodical woman named Sergeant Tricia Harmon, who asked questions the way people do when they already know most of the answers and are simply building the record. I made a spreadsheet. I listed every visit I could document to my grandmother's house across the previous 3 years. Every phone call in my history, every errand, every appointment I had driven her to. I pulled my calendar back to 2019. I printed bank statements showing the $3,000 I had contributed toward the roof in 2011. I found the email thread where I had coordinated her physical therapy schedule after the wrist injury. I was not doing this to argue my own worth. The beneficiary designation handled that cleanly. I did it because Sergeant Harmon said early on that context matters. That the fuller the picture, the harder it is for anyone to claim anything was ambiguous or informal or merely a misunderstanding between family members who meant well. My mother cooperated fully. 2 other family members, when approached separately, confirmed they had witnessed Gloria going through paperwork at my grandmother's house within the first 48 hours after she passed. Gloria hired a lawyer. She maintained for 6 weeks that the signatures were legitimate, that my grandmother had asked her to help manage the account, that there had been an informal verbal agreement. The notarized letter made that argument very difficult to sustain. I was not in the room when Gloria was formally confronted with the full evidence. I was not there for the moment her explanations stopped holding together. But my mother was, because she was named in the estate, and she told me about it afterward. She said Gloria had started crying before the end of the first meeting. Not the kind of crying that asks for something. The kind that comes when the story you've been telling yourself finally meets something it can't get past. I did not feel triumphant when I heard that. I felt tired in a way I had not expected. Tired in the particular way of someone who has been right about something for a very long time and finds no joy in the confirmation. Gloria repaid the $33,000 as part of a civil settlement. She avoided criminal charges, barely, and only because my grandmother's letter had made the boundaries of the original intent clear enough that what Gloria had done could be argued, at its edges, as a misunderstanding of authority rather than pure fraud. An argument her lawyer made persuasively, and which I did not contest because my grandmother had also, in that letter, said, "I don't want her in prison. I just want what's mine to go where I said it should go." So that's what happened. The money went where my grandmother said it should. To me and my mother, split equally. To this day, that fact sits in me strangely. Not with guilt. My grandmother was clear, and my mother and I both knew we had earned nothing, that it was a gift freely given, that we would honor it. But with a weight I hadn't anticipated. The weight of being seen, finally, publicly, officially, by someone who was no longer there to hear me say thank you. My share was $160,000. After taxes and legal fees, it became approximately $138,000. I paid off the debt I had carried since I was 26. I invested the rest carefully, with the help of a financial advisor my grandmother's estate attorney recommended. I did not buy anything flashy. I did not tell many people. I bought a new fireproof box. Gloria and I do not speak. I have not made that a dramatic declaration. She does not call, and I do not call, and we have arrived, by mutual avoidance, at a silence that suits us both. My mother has a more complicated relationship with her own feelings about her sister. Grief and anger and something like pity, all three on different days. I try to give her space for that without opinion. My cousin Brandon reached out once, about 8 months after everything concluded. A short text. Said he hadn't known what his mother was doing. That he was sorry I had to deal with it. I wrote back, "I appreciate that." I left it there. Some bridges you don't burn. You just stop walking across them. I think about my grandmother's kitchen table a lot. The cornbread I still can't replicate. The window cracked in October. The way she put that envelope in my hands like she had been waiting to do it for years and was finally, at last, unburdened. I have tried to understand what I was supposed to take from all of this beyond the obvious. What I keep coming back to is something quieter than justice. It is the knowledge that showing up, consistently, without expectation, just because it is the right thing to do, is never wasted. Even when it goes unseen for decades. Even when you start to wonder if it matters. It matters. Someone is always watching. Someone always knows. My grandmother knew. She had always known. She was just waiting for the right time and the right document and the right granddaughter to hand it to. If you are someone who has been passed over, looked through, given less than you deserved while someone louder and more demanding walked off with what was meant for you, I want you to hear this. Your consistency is not nothing. Your quiet showing up is not invisible. It is being recorded somewhere, by someone, and it will matter in ways you cannot predict and may not see for a very long time. Keep showing up. Keep the receipts. Keep your important documents in a fireproof box, and answer the phone when the bank calls you back. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. If this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered something about your family that reordered everything you thought you knew? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. Until next time, the truth has a way of surfacing. Let it.